Rest is usually described as something simple, something you look forward to, something that restores balance. But for many people, rest doesn't feel calming at all. It feels uncomfortable, uneasy, sometimes even wrong. You stop working, you slow down, you try to be still, and instead of relief, there's tension, a background alertness, a sense that something is unfinished, a quiet pressure to move again, not because anything urgent is happening, but because stopping feels exposed. This experience is more common than people admit. Rest often comes with guilt, with restlessness, with the feeling that time is being wasted. Even when nothing is required of you, your mind keeps checking what you should be doing, checking what you might be forgetting, checking whether it's safe to stay still. So rest becomes shallow. You rest with one eye open. You pause without settling. And instead of recovery, you feel slightly unsettled. Rest is often treated as something conditional, something you're allowed to do later, after one more task, after one more responsibility. I'll rest once this is finished. I'll stop when things calm down. But that moment keeps moving. Rest becomes postponed rather than entered, always slightly out of reach. And because rest is delayed, it never becomes familiar. It stays abstract, unpracticed. So when you finally do stop, it doesn't feel natural. It feels foreign, like something you're not fully allowed to have yet. This isn't because you don't know how to rest, and it isn't because you're wired incorrectly. It's because rest isn't just the absence of effort, it's the absence of structure. When structure disappears, the nervous system doesn't automatically relax. It looks for orientation, for something that tells it where it stands. So the discomfort you feel during rest isn't failure. It's your system trying to stay organized without its usual signals. Most people think stress comes from doing too much, but a lot of tension actually comes from knowing what comes next. Busyness provides direction. Tasks provide boundaries. Pressure provides momentum. Rest removes all three at once. Without those external cues, your system doesn't know how to position itself. That uncertainty doesn't feel peaceful. It feels unstable. So the body stays alert even while resting. Structure feels calming even when it's exhausting. Because structure is predictable. You know what's expected. You know how to respond. You know where you stand. Stillness removes that certainty. Effort may be tiring, but it's familiar. Uncertainty is quiet, but it's undefined. So many systems choose the known pressure over the unknown pause, not because it's healthier, but because it's clearer. This is why rest often feels harder than continuing. Not because effort is easier, but because effort holds things together. To understand why rest feels wrong, you have to look at what effort has been doing beneath the surface. Rest is often treated as a reward, something you earn once everything else is handled. But psychologically, rest isn't a reward state. It's a transition state, and transitions are uncomfortable for systems that rely on continuity. When effort stops, suddenly, there's no gradual landing. Just silence. And silence is unfamiliar when momentum has been carrying you forward. When you're active, your attention is externally anchored. There's something to respond to, something to complete, something to manage. Rest removes that anchor. Attention turns inward, thoughts become louder, feelings become more noticeable. Uncertainty has room to surface. The system interprets this not as rest, but as loss of control, so tension appears. When external anchors disappear, attention doesn't settle, it drifts. It scans for something to land on, something to organize around, something to respond to. This scanning isn't anxiety, it's orientation seeking. The system is checking its surroundings internally. Without a task to hold attention in place, awareness becomes restless, and rest begins to feel unstable rather than soothing. Once rest feels uncomfortable, a pattern forms. You avoid stopping fully. You distract yourself while resting. You keep mental pressure alive. That pressure creates movement. Movement creates relief. Relief reinforces the pattern. Over time, your system learns something simple. Stillness equals discomfort. Motion equals safety. So rest becomes something you rush through rather than enter. This creates a quiet emotional cost. You never fully recover. You never fully settle. You're always slightly on. Even moments meant for rest carry tension. Not intense stress, just enough unease to prevent release. And because this feels subtle, it's rarely questioned. It just becomes normal. There's also an identity cost to rest that rarely gets named. When you stop, you're no longer producing, no longer progressing, no longer visibly moving forward. If activity has been how you measure yourself, rest feels like a loss of relevance, not consciously, but subtly. The question becomes, if I'm not doing, who am I right now? And that question doesn't feel comfortable. So people compensate. They scroll while resting. They plan tomorrow while lying down. They stay productive even during breaks. Rest becomes activity in disguise, not because they want stimulation, but because structure feels safer than emptiness. The system isn't seeking pleasure. It's seeking containment. Understanding this intellectually doesn't dissolve it, because this pattern isn't driven by logic. It's driven by regulation. Your system learned that pressure keeps things intact. So removing pressure feels like risk. Even when you know rest is good for you, your nervous system hasn't caught up. Systems trained on pressure often distrust ease. Effort feels like proof that things are under control, that you're paying attention, that nothing is slipping. Ease removes that proof. So even when nothing is wrong, relaxation can feel risky, as if something important might be missed. Pressure reassures the system. Stillness does not, at least not yet. The usual response is to try harder at resting, to force relaxation, to optimize downtime, to make rest productive. But effort applied to rest recreates the same problem. Pressure returns. Structure returns. Tension stays. So rest remains incomplete. This is where frustration often peaks. You're doing everything right. You've slowed down. You've made space. Yet rest still feels wrong. That's not because rest is failing. It's because your system hasn't yet learned how to feel safe without effort. Rest isn't meant to feel instantly good. It's meant to feel unfamiliar at first, because it removes the patterns that once kept you regulated. Discomfort during rest isn't a warning. It's exposure. Nothing needs fixing here. You're not broken. You're not resistant. You're not doing rest incorrectly. Your system is adjusting to a different way of existing, one without constant direction. That adjustment takes time. When nothing needs fixing, there's a pause the system isn't used to. No correction, no optimization, no next step, just space. That space can feel empty at first, but over time it becomes neutral, then familiar, not peaceful in a dramatic way, just quiet enough to stop bracing. That's what adjustment looks like. If rest feels wrong, it doesn't mean you should avoid it, and it doesn't mean you should force it. It simply means your system is learning something new, that nothing collapses when you stop, and that learning doesn't need urgency. It just needs time.